Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to take a few minutes and just talk about battery voltage for maybe the first time tool buyer. So maybe you bought your first house or you've got your first homestead and you're looking to get some projects done and you want a tool that's going to first off have the power needed to get those tasks done, but it's also going to last a while and won't break the bank. So this isn't maybe intended for the first time or for contractors and stuff, but for those people who are just kind of getting into it, it can kind of seem a little daunting and a little bit confusing. So let me first just start off by saying the primary two battery voltages that you're going to get into, regardless of brand, is typically a 12 volt or a 18 volt. Or you could call it 20 volts, depends on how you want to look at it. So all manufacturers, whether they say 20 volts or 18 volts, they're using the same exact cells essentially and the same sort of technology really. These are all 20 volts when they're resting fully charged. An 18 volt battery pack, if it's advertised as such, it's 20 volts when it's fully charged and just sitting there resting. Any 20 volt pack like this from DeWalt, as soon as it gets put under load in the tool, it immediately becomes 18 volts. And that's just how that works. So some companies are advertising the voltage as it's working. Some companies are advertising it as it's resting, fully charged. So don't be misled. A 20 volt tool from like DeWalt doesn't have more voltage and more power than a 18 volt tool from a different competitor. It may have more power just due to the design of the motor, but it's not because of the battery. It's not higher voltage and therefore better, right? That's just not how that works. You would have to get into a much higher voltage for that to start showing up, like 36 volts, 60 volts, 120 volts. That exists, and that would start to come into play there. 12 volt tools are advertised, almost all of them are advertised in their resting state. So it's 12 volts when it's fully charged and resting, but as soon as the tool begins to work, it's actually a 10.8 volt tool, and that's just the reality. And to prove it, I've got a couple of batteries here from different manufacturers. I've got my multimeter here. Let's see if I can prop this up. Hopefully you guys, let me see here. I didn't really think about this, how I was going to show this off. So let me get it propped up here though. Hopefully you can see it. Oh, it's a little bit precarious. Oh boy. Boy, I should have thought about how I was going to do this beforehand. Well, let me hold it. Let me see if I can do this with one hand. So I've got my 20 volt DeWalt battery here. I'm going to take my probes. I'm going to get them in here without breaking anything, hopefully. And what you should be seeing, see, 18 volts. And that's because this pack is not fully charged. It's slightly depleted, so it's gonna, even in a resting state, it's gonna show up as that 18 volts here, right? Okay, so if I was to throw that on the charger, I was to get that up to a full charge, it would show up as 20 volts. To prove it, this is an 18 volt tool from Milwaukee. This pack is fully charged, or at least it appears to be. We're gonna test this one. Let's see here. And that should be showing up as like 20, if I can get my terminals, hang on. There's not very much room on there to get these to touch. There we go, 20 volts. So hopefully you guys can see that. There's 20 volts, that's the Milwaukee, boom, okay? So, and then just to make it kosher, here's the Hilti. This is a 12 volt tool. Hilti. $12 volts resting. Okay, it's a fully charged pack. As soon as I begin to deplete it or it's under load, it would be 10.8 volts. So, so just something to consider if you guys are getting into tools and stuff like that. Don't be misled by marketing hype. 20 volts tools aren't necessarily better because of voltage, at least, compared to an 18 volt tool. They're all essentially using the same stuff. So one thing to be aware of though, and this is going to make it a little bit more confusing, and for most people you don't really need to worry about this, there can be different cell types in 18 volt tools and in 12 volt tools. So for the longest time, lithium packs were built out of 18650 cells. And it was multiple cells in there stacked up to provide the 18 volts and then the amp hours that it was rated at. So they're incredibly efficient. They kind of set the standard for lithium for a long time. Newer technology, though, as always, comes forth. Better options. Let me get this back off here. This is a battery from Metabo. You guys probably won't see these in most big box stores, but it is what it is. So this is an 18 volt pack, just like all the others. This, however, is using a much larger, well, let me rephrase that. It's a more powerful cell. It's a better cell. It's more efficient. It can drain faster. It can recharge faster. It can handle kind of more extreme working conditions and loads without the pack or without the actual cells giving out. This is made out of 21700 cells. So again, for the typical homeowner or homesteader, anything like that, if you're just looking for some tools to play with or to get some, run-of-the-mill projects done, you really don't have to worry about that too much unless you really want to pay attention to it. So, and most manufacturers now are starting to come out with a line of those higher running packs that feature those 21700 cells. And the same thing happens in 12 volt. This is a pack from Hilti, and I'm almost positive this one will have the 21700 cells in it. Other 12 volt tools will feature the 18650s. And again, for the most part, it's not going to change much in terms of getting your projects done at your place. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, though, is, okay, which one would you choose? Would you choose an 18 volt, or is 12 volts good enough? Okay, so up until kind of lithium took over the market and brushless motors really kind of became the go-to, I would have definitely said 18 volts is going to get all your projects done and you're not going to have to worry about much. That still remains true. 18 volt tools set the standard in terms of power, efficiency, all those things. But because there was giant gains in 18 volt tools, there's also been giant gains in 12 volt tools. And anymore, for so many tasks, most people would probably be very happy with a 12 volt tool like this. So a few of the advantages, something to think about. A 12 volt tool is almost always going to be inherently lighter, right? It's a smaller motor, it's a smaller battery pack, so the overall package is going to be quite a bit smaller. That makes it very nice to use long term. If you're running it all day, maybe you're building a deck or something like that, it's very nice. It's light, ergonomic, all those things. So, and in terms of power, again, they've made such good gains. I can take this drill driver right here and I can drive in a large structural screw and it'll handle the task just fine. Now, if you were going to be doing that all day, maybe you want to look at an 18 volt tool just to ensure that you're going to get the test done in an efficient way, but also that you're not going to wear out a tool or something like that. That would kind of be the maximum task that it would want to handle, right? But if you're doing your typical 3-inch, 2-inch screws, you're doing furniture assembly, those types of things, and you're not running in giant legs or you're not running in structural screws on a continuous basis, this thing's going to do the job. Now, they do make impact drivers. They make, so many tools. So definitely worth considering. Don't rule out 12 volts. If it makes sense for you, definitely consider it. And then lastly, in terms of brands, that's going to be something that it'll be slightly personal preference. Maybe the tools fit your hand better. Maybe they have features that you value more than others. The other thing to pay attention though to is always look at their 18 volt lineup, look at their 12 volt lineup, and then try and think ahead and say, if I was going to start to invest in some tools, what range is going to cover most of my needs? For example, Milwaukee makes an incredibly extensive 12 volt and 18 volt lineup. It's available at most local stores like Home Depot, etc. So it's a great platform for a lot of people, especially that 12 volt lineup. They have an incredible tool list of 12 volt tools. It's really pretty impressive. They've got impact drivers, drill drivers, reciprocating saws, miter saws. I mean, if you can think of it, they've probably got it. It's pretty impressive. DeWalt, Makita, You start going through the list, there's a bunch of companies and they have really nice lineups of both 12 and 18 volt tools. So just think about, what's available near you, what fits your hand well, what features are you looking for, and then which range is going to kind of hit most of those points for you. But yeah, I think that's just about everything I wanted to talk about. Hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully that made it less confusing, because it's kind of just kind of the Wild West in terms of what you're able to market and how that all works. So if you guys have any questions, any comments, anything like that, please let me know down in the comment section down below. Please hit that subscribe button. Give me maybe a thumbs up. I appreciate that. And I will catch you guys in the next one.